Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the 75th session of the Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific. Please join me in welcoming our special guests now entering the room. His Excellency Mr. Silom Saikom Masid, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Lao People's Democratic Republic and acting chair of the 74th session of the Commission. His Excellency Mr. Baron Divavesi Vaka, President of Nauru and current chair of the Pacific Islands Forum, and Mr. Mitch Shea, Secretary of the Commission. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, at this time we will begin the opening ceremony with the traditional parade of flags of the members and associate members of the Commission. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, may I now request His Excellency Mr. Selim Sai Komasit, the acting chair of the 74th session of the Commission, to preside over the meeting. Thank you.
Excellencies, Madam Executive Secretary, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to call the meeting to order. It is my honor and privilege to be present here today on behalf of the chair of the 74th session. Before we move into today's agenda, please allow me to say a few words about the past years in the work of the Commission. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, the 74th sessions of the Commission that comes to an end today was characterized by the theme, Inequality in the Era of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The commitment to address inequality in Asia and the Pacific was further reaffirmed by the Committee on Social Development, which recommended developing a regional modality on social protection, as well as the midterm review of the Asia and Pacific declarations on population and development, where participants emphasized the needs to put people and their rights at the heart of development. In the past years, countries have leveraged ESCAP's intergovernmental platform to strengthen the foundation to accelerate implementations of 2030 agenda in the region. The Asia-Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development has further established itself as a vital multi-stakeholders platform to, on the one hand, help countries prepare for and feed regional priority into the high-level political forum on sustainable development, and on the other hand, bring stakeholders together to share expertise and experiences that can accelerate implementations of at the national level. Recognizing the needs for whole of government support to strengthen official statistics for the 2030 agenda, the Committee on Statistics adopted the declarations on navigating policies with data to leave no one behind, which calls on governments to make 9 commitments to strengthen and transform national statistical system. These declarations will be considered later this week for endorsement by this session. The third Ministerial Conference on Space Applications for Sustainable Development in Asia and the Pacific adopted the Asia-Pacific Plan of Action on Space Applications for Sustainable Development 2018-2030, a regionally coordinated blueprint that harness space applications and digital innovations to support countries, particularly those with special needs, to address the 14 out of 17 Sustainable Development Goals. This declaration and plan of actions will also be considered by this session for endorsement. In order to enhance the sustainability of region, the Commission on Environment and Development suggested creating a platform for resource efficiency, while the Committee on Transport highlighted opportunity for more environmental friendly modes of transport and improve road safety in the region. There is a lot of work ahead of us. Collective regional action and cooperations are vital to achieve the promise of the 2030 agenda. I have observed a strong commitment by ESCAP members to step up their implementation efforts with support from the Secretariat to translate global commitment into transformative regional strategy. I look forward to our deliberation this year on the key issue of empowerment and ensuring inclusiveness and equality. Building on the theme from last year, we have the opportunity to identify concrete measures to ensure that no one is left behind in our region. Thank you for your attention. I would like now to proceed with the elections of officers. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, it is my pleasure now to conduct an election of officers for the 75th sessions of the Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific. The Bureau of the Commission will comprise the chair, vice chairs of the ministerial portions of the sessions, which meets today and tomorrow, as well as the chair and vice chair of the committee of the whole and the working group on draft resolutions. First, I shall invite nomination for the chair and vice chair of the committee of the whole and the chair and vice chairs of the working group on draft resolution. Malaysia.
Yes,
I
Mr.
recognize
Chair.
the representative of Malaysia. You have the floor.
Thank you. Taking into account the importance of the Committee of the Whole and the Working Group on Draft Resolutions, as well as the experience and the seniority of the delegations, I have the honor to propose the election of the following distinguished representatives for the bureaus of the Senior Officials segment. For the Committee of the Whole, I would like to propose the Chair, Mr. Mahir Tuponua, Secretary, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Tonga. Vice Chairs, Mr. Rajneesh, the Joint Secretary, Department of Commerce, Ministry of Commerce and Industry of India, and Mr. Agustaviano Sofjan, Director for Development, Economic and Environmental Affairs, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Indonesia. For the Working Group on Draft Resolutions, we would like to propose the Chair, Her Excellency, Ms. Raushan Yazbulatova, Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary and Permanent Representative of Kazakhstan to ESCAP, and Vice Chair, Mr. Hiroshi Kawamura, Minister and Deputy Chief of Mission and Permanent Representative of Japan to ESCAP. I'm sure that the distinguished delegates which I have proposed will discharge their duties efficiently for the successful deliberations of the committee and working group. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, the representative of Malaysia, who has nominated the chair and vice chair of the committee of the whole and the chair and vice chairs of the working group of the draft resolution. I would like the delegation to second the nomination as I have, as a representative of Malaysia has nominated. Australia. I recognize the representative of Australia. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have great pleasure in seconding the nominations which have just been proposed by the distinguished delegate of Malaysia for the various positions of the bureaus. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, the representative of Australia. The nominations for the Bureau of the Senior Official Segment and the Working Group on Draft Resolution has been proposed by the distinguished delegates of Malaysia, and they have been seconded by the distinguished delegates of Australia. Are there any nominations for the chair and the vice chairs of the committee of the whole and the chair and vice chairs for the working group on the draft resolution? I see none. It is my great pleasure then to declare Mr. Ma Tupunya of Tonga as the chair of the committee of the whole, and Mr. Rajni of India, and Mr. Agustiviano Sorjan of Indonesia as the vice chair of the committee of the whole. For the chair of the working group on draft resolution, the Commission has elected His Excellency Ms. Rashan Yesbu Latuva, Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary and Permanent Representative of Kazakhstan to ESCAP. And as Vice Chair of the Working Group on Draft Resolution, the Commission has elected Mr. Hiroshi Kawamura, Minister and Deputy Chief of Mission and the Permanent Representative of Japan to ESCAP. May I now? So, it is decided. May I now invite nomination from the member of the chair of, for the chair of the 75th sessions of the Commission. I recognize the distinguished delegates of Bhutan. You have the floor, sir.
Mr. Chair, I have the great honor to propose His Excellency Mr. Damdim Tsogbatar, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Mongolia, for the position of Chair of the 75th session of the Commission. I am confident that under his able leadership, the 75th session will be led to a successful conclusion. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished delegates of Bhutan. The distinguished delegate of Bhutan has nominated His Excellencies Mr. Damdin Tsogbatar, the Foreign Ministers of Mongolia, as chair. I would like any delegation, I would like to see any delegations who would like to second the nominations made by the distinguished delegates of Bhutan. Representative of Fiji, you have the floor.
Mr. Chair, I have the great pleasure in seconding the nomination of His Excellency Mr. Damdin Tsogbatar, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Mongolia, for the position of Chair of the 75th session of the Commission. I too am confident that under his able leadership, the 75th session will be led to a successful conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegates of Fiji, for your secondment. The nominations of His Excellency Mr. Damdin Tsogbatar, the Foreign Ministers of Mongolia, has been proposed by the distinguished delegates of Bhutan and has been seconded by the distinguished delegate of Fiji. It is so decided. Are there any other? It is now my pleasure to declare His Excellency Mr. Damdin Tsogbatar, the Foreign Minister of Mongolia, duly elected as the chair of the 75th sessions of the Commission. For the vice chair of the session, I propose, with the consent of the Commission, that the following practice adopted in previous sessions, Rule number 13 of the Rule of Procedures of the Commission, providing for the elections of only 2 vice chair, be suspended for this session. With your concurrence, and also in accordance with the past practice, I propose that all ministerial level delegates in attendance be elected as vice chair of the Commission. If there is no objection, it is so decided. Please now join me in congratulating the newly elected chair and all of the officials and commission. The list of officers will be duly circulated by the Secretariat. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, it is now my honor to invite His Excellency Mr. Damdin Tsogbatar, the chair of the 75th sessions, to conduct the meeting from this point forward. Thank you, Excellencies.
Excellencies, Madam Executive Secretary, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you all for the confidence placed in me and the honor that you have bestowed on my country and on me. Together with my colleagues, the Honorable Vice Chairs, I shall endeavor to do my very best to discharge the responsibilities of serving as your chair with the support of the ESCAP Secretariat. Also here, I wish to express our deepest gratitude to the Royal Thai government and to the people of Thailand for their warm welcome extended to me and my delegation. Ladies and gentlemen, before I move on with the proceedings of the session, I would like to say a few words with regard to the major issues facing our region and with regard to the major issues that we ought to discuss during this session. Over the recent years, Asia and the Pacific has turned into fastest growing region in the world. The region is home to 60% of the world's population, and it accounts for some 40% of global exports and 35% of global imports. With the economic growth, the region is facing considerable challenges, such as rising inequalities in income, wealth, and opportunities within the countries. The ESCAP is the unique intergovernmental platform in the greater region, which aims at focusing on both social and economic progress in tandem. Indeed, the exponential growth and experience over the past 30 years, we have learned that the economic growth alone does not ensure social progress unless holistic approach and strategies are not employed. It also has the unique ability to integrate and synergize sound analysis with intergovernmental deliberations leading to normative outcomes and technical cooperation. ESCAP has continuously contributed to the development of the region and has played an important role in addressing the key socioeconomic challenges facing the region, identifying common priorities and setting the regional agenda for action by providing its valuable guidance. I wish to thank the Secretariat for its report on closing the gap, empowerment and inclusion in Asia and the Pacific. The report provided new insights to policymakers by identifying options to empower people and ensure inclusiveness and equality in Asia and the Pacific in three key areas of socioeconomic development, namely education, decent work, and income. Considering the most important notion of the SDG, no one left behind, it is timely and appropriate that the 75th session of ESCAP is being held under the theme of people's empowerment and ensuring inclusiveness and equality. This session gives us opportunity to accelerate the pace of implementation, shape policies, and integrate the national strategies to reduce the gap between the rich and the poor and to mitigate the threats from the climate change. I wish to assure Ms. Alice Jabana that we, the members of the ESCAP, will work hand in hand with the Secretariat to promote inclusive and sustainable development in Asia and the Pacific, and she will have my full cooperation as the chair of the 75th session. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, the government of Mongolia prioritizes the need to provide our people with the better access to social and economic opportunities. Mongolia currently is experiencing a positive momentum. Our economic growth was 6.9% in 2018, and in the first half of this year it is reportedly growing at the rate of 8.5%. The economy is forecast to maintain its pace in the coming years. The total foreign trade turnover and exports in 2018 reached both their record high in our history levels. The foreign direct investment inflow also showed a significant increase of 18% from the previous year. However, if we look at these figures from the social perspective, the wealth generated by the economic growth is not evenly distributed, especially in the marginalized rural sedentary areas as well as urban centers. Lack of jobs and investment, income disparity, and climate change triggered challenges are forcing many rural inhabitants to migrate to the capital. Currently, more than half of our population lives in Ulaanbaatar. They migrate to capital to seek better education, decent jobs, and stable incomes, but because of lack of work skills and qualified education, most of them find it hard to adjust to a new life in the city. Due to the sudden growth of urban population, social challenges such as, for example, housing, air pollution, infrastructure shortage, traffic jams, and overcrowding of schools have become the most pressing issue facing us in the recent years. Therefore, with a view to mitigating citizens' inflow from rural areas and closing the rural-urban gap, the government of Mongolia has started to implement a three-stage policy, that is, the three-pillar development policy for 2018 to 2020 and the midterm policies for 2020 to 2025 and 2025 to 2030. Currently, my government's main development policy comprises the following three strategies, which include the multi-pillar economic development policy, the rule of law and justice plan, and the human-centered social policy. Mongolia aims at diversifying its economy within the framework of the above multi-pillar development policy. We consider light industry, especially food processing, along with tourism and infrastructure, as our main economic sectors besides mining and geology. Moreover, my government gives high priority to establishing fairness in the society, strengthening the rule of law, improving discipline and accountability, ensuring transparency in the public service, increasing jobs to reduce poverty, and we are also paying more attention to the public health and social issues. With the view to overcome the development challenges, the landlocked geographical location, and to secure equitable distribution of economic gains, Mongolia aims at turning itself into a land-linked country. To this end, we have taken concrete actions to build connectivity with the regional economies and concluded a number of agreements in this respect. The program on establishing economic corridor between Mongolia, Russia, and China, approved by the presidents of the three countries in 2016, sets the basic principles, mechanisms, and priority projects for the economic corridor. Currently, we are working on practical implementation of the program as a part of the Belt and Road Initiative. It is also worth noting here that oil and gas pipeline projects connecting Russia and China through Mongolia are having a renewed attention, enriching the content of the program. Furthermore, the Intergovernmental Agreement on International Road Transport along the Asian Highway Network was concluded between Mongolia, China, and Russia with the support of ESCAP in 2016. Mongolia, as a country with a vast territory, can certainly contribute to the regional energy supply, especially through the construction of renewable energy facilities. The President of Mongolia, in this context, has called upon the prompt commencement of the Northeast Asian Supergrid project, which can support the system during peak hours, optimizing the energy use in the region. Besides the above, Mongolia and China are discussing the pursuit of a joint project of setting up an energy complex and a high-voltage transmission line between the two nations. The complex will comprise the stations with the installed capacity of 5,350 megawatts generated by the solar, wind, and coal sources. We expect that the implementation of the above-mentioned transport, logistical, and energy initiatives would result in building more infrastructure and creating more jobs with decent salaries that would in return be conducive to the development of rural areas. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I am pleased to inform here that Mongolia is going to present the first voluntary national review of the implementation of the SDGs at the high-level political forum on sustainable development to be held in New York this July. We had previously presented 5 reports on the Millennium Development Goals. Our very first review on the SDGs takes air pollution as a key example of the modern challenging issues, and it highlights that inequality remains a serious impediment that undermines the durability of development gains. In particular, the review stresses the importance of policy coherence, which eventually requires the concerted implementation across the government ministries as well as the setting up of the monitoring and evaluation systems to report the progress. Considering the core principle of the SDGs, leave no one behind, the review identifies the vulnerable groups such as women, youth, the disabled and low-income citizens of the population that are at risk of being left behind. We assume that the review would become a crucial platform to deepen the SDG awareness across the stakeholders and to strengthen the consensus around the criticality of coherent and coordinated action across the sectors. In conclusion, Mongolia remains committed to achieving the SDGs by 2030. The Agenda 2030 was localized by the Mongolian government. It worked out its national sustainable development vision as well as facilitated the regulatory and institutional frameworks for the SDGs planning, in addition to developing the methods of the SDG-informed budgeting. Therefore, we need to pay particular attention to their means of implementation, including the financing for development, the technology transfers, the trade facilitation, the regional economic cooperation, etc. I would like to officially declare the 75th session of the ESCAP open. I look forward to fruitful and constructive discussions during the session. I thank you for your kind attention. Thank you. Well, distinguished delegates, excellencies, well, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, First of all, we really would like to welcome Her Royal Highness that she found time and really attended and joined our session today. We really feel honored with your presence here. Thank you. Well, I thank you. Now we are moving to the agenda issue, item number 1, adoption of the agenda. So, Excellencies, the provisional agenda of the 75th session of the Commission is contained in document ESCAP/75/L1. So I hope everybody has the document in front of you. Does any delegation have any comments on the agenda? Well, I see none. So may I propose to the Commission that the provisional agenda as contained in document ESCAP/75/L1 be adopted. So the agenda is adopted. So, now, Your Royal Highness, we really are, again, I'd like to express our, sense of honor that you joined our session here, and we thank you deeply for gracing us with your presence here. Now, Your Royal Highness, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, the President of the 73rd General Assembly, Ms. Maria Fernanda Espinosa, is unable to attend the Commission session, but has sent us a video message, and I would like the Secretariat to play the video message for us.
Your Royal Highness Princess Maha Chakri Sirington of Thailand, Your Excellency Damding Sogbatar, Chair of the 75th Session and Foreign Minister of Mongolia, Ms. Armida Salsia Alice Jabana, Executive Secretary of ESCAP, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me a great pleasure to send this message to the 75th Session of ESCAP. I would like to take this opportunity to express my heartfelt congratulations to the Kingdom of Thailand, ESCAP's host country, on the auspicious coronation of His Majesty Wajiralongkorn earlier this month. I would also like to congratulate Ms. Alice Jabana on her appointment last year. It is wonderful that we have for the first time women in charge of all 5 UN regional commissions. Having worked closely with ECLAC in Latin America and the Caribbean, I know firsthand how instrumental regional commissions are in providing research, advice, and technical support. Excellencies, the theme of your session, empowering people and ensuring inclusivity and equality, goes to the heart of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Over the past 4 years, it has been inspiring to see ESCAP's work to engage stakeholders through your knowledge and business networks and your outreach to civil society and youth. It has also been encouraging to see the Asia-Pacific region make headway on targets across the 2030 Agenda, such as poverty, education, child marriage, and energy. But the region still faces deep challenges in areas including clean water, decent work, and economic growth. And there are huge disparities between and within countries. The 5 countries with the highest wealth inequality are all in this region. To keep our promise of leaving no one behind, ESCAP's recent Closing the Gap report called for increased investment in social protections and stronger institutional and legal frameworks that promote inclusion and empower women and girls, the closest thing we have to a magic formula for the SDGs. This will require political leadership from within the region as well as multi-stakeholder action at all levels, local, national, regional, and global. By working together, we can use tools such as taxation, trade and technology to demonstrate that we, governments and multilateral institutions, can deliver real benefits to people's lives. Excellencies, the Asia-Pacific region was an engine of growth, development, and innovation during the Millennium Development Goal era. I know you will provide leadership on the SDGs too. As we approach crucial meetings this September in New York, the SDG Summit, the Climate Action Summit, and high-level meetings on financing for development, universal healthcare, and the Samoa Pathway, this 75th session of ESCAP is a very important opportunity to prepare for the final decade of the 2030 Agenda, to reflect honestly on progress so far, and to determine the most transformative steps we can take now to put the region and world on track to a more prosperous, equitable, and sustainable future for everyone. Thank you.
Well, now I would like to move to the video message sent by the Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres. He was unable to attend the commission and kindly recorded the message for us and send it over to us. So I would like to invite the conference room officer to play the video for us.
I'm pleased to send you my warmest greetings. Asia-Pacific continues to be a leader on economic growth, poverty reduction, and increased access to public services. In recent decades, the quality of life has improved for most people in the region. But growing inequalities present a threat to further advances. The challenge is to ensure that socio-economic progress reaches those left behind. And I welcome your session's focus on inclusion, equality, and empowerment, which are critical for achieving the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. We must also do far more to combat climate change in the region. I visited the South Pacific this month and saw the brutal impacts of the global climate emergency. This is a battle we can and must win. We need to start taxing pollution, not people, and we need to stop subsidizing fossil fuels and stop building new coal plants by 2020. The Climate Action Summit I'm convening in September is an opportunity to mobilize solutions, ambition, and finance. I will count on your engagement and support. Please accept my best wishes for a fruitful session in Bangkok. Thank you.
Thank you. Your Royal Highness, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, it is now my pleasant duty to invite Executive Secretary Ms. Armida Salcia Alisjabana to deliver her welcome and policy statement. Madam Executive Secretary, the floor is yours.
Your Royal Highness, Princess Maha Chakri Sirinthorn, Your Excellency, Mr. Damdin Sokbatar, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Mongolia and the chair of this commission session, Your Excellency, Mr. Baron Difa Fesi Waka, President of Nauru, Honorable Ministers, Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 75th session of the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific. It is a privilege to be greeting so many distinguished representatives from across our region. May I begin by paying tribute to the life and achievements of Privy Council President General Prem Tinsulanon. General Prem made an enormous contribution to shaping modern Thailand, for which he will always be remembered. The United Nations in Thailand shares the loss and sorrow felt at the passing of such a statement. On its behalf, I would like to express our deepest condolences. Her Royal Highness, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, since this commission first met in 1947, our countries have traveled a long journey. Our economies are expected to become larger than the rest of the world combined, measured by purchasing power parity. It is often said the Asia-Pacific region is the engine of the world economy. With multilateralism increasingly challenged, we have yet more to offer. We can provide the global leadership to collectively achieve a transformed and resilient society in our region. Empowered societies working in concert to respond to challenges which transcend borders and accelerate progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. With these challenges in mind, this Commission is our opportunity to reaffirm our shared responsibility and commitment to the ambition of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, to build on past successes and shape future priorities. Let me mention 5 areas which I believe are central to achieving the transformation and resilience we need. We must put people first and build a coherent response to population dynamics which are radically altering our societies and our economies. We can learn from each other as we strengthen policies, institutions, and legislation to empower people and promote equality. These efforts should be complemented by work to strengthen regional cooperation on population development and social protection, but also to promote gender equality, disability rights, and safe, orderly, and regular migration. Strengthening sustainable connectivity could make us more resilient to international trade tensions and deliver huge economic benefits. When it comes to transport and infrastructure connectivity, we have achievements on which to build, guided by international standards, UN norms, and values. The same ambition is needed for energy connectivity, information and communication technology connectivity, and trade facilitation measures. We have an opportunity to join forces to strengthen our work to combat environmental degradation, pollution, and the mismanagement of natural resources. To protect our oceans, there is no alternative to stepping up our multilateral cooperation. Transformed and resilient societies can only be achieved if we stop disaster risk outpacing resilience. Intensified by climate change, disasters are 5 times more likely to affect a person in Asia Pacific than a person living elsewhere. The basis for stronger regional cooperation is well established. Let us use it to give pace to the development of national disaster risk reduction strategies. New technologies have the potential to accelerate our journey to transform and resilient societies on many fronts. Digital healthcare and education are providing cost-effective solutions at scale. Smart cities, energy systems, and transport solutions are offering alternatives to protect the environment. Yet, for digital solutions to be unleashed as a force for good, their broader implications need to be fully understood and the necessary infrastructure developed. An enabling environment, investment, and technological, individual, and institutional capacity are all needed. UN ESCAP should be a forum for best practice exchange to harness digital technology for sustainable development. The regional roadmap for implementing the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is a framework which will continue to guide our work. Yet, we should also continuously sharpen our policy focus as the situation evolves, including to respond to these 5 priorities. From an institutional perspective, UN ESCAP and the United Nations system are working to remain fit for purpose. You will be discussing the midterm review of this Commission's conference structure during this session. The United Nations Development System reform is well underway. It has moved to its regional phase. In this broader context, I have established an eminent persons advisory group and am seeking views from all interested parties. Our goal is to identify how we can better serve the needs of our member states and deepen meaningful engagement with all our partners. I believe a energized approach to supporting a transformed and resilient society coming into focus. At the sub-regional level, UN ESCAP's partnership with sub-regional organizations must be strengthened. Where common objectives exist, we must work to complement each other. Where best practice can be shared, UN ESCAP can facilitate such exchanges. We are supporting the development of a complementarities roadmap with ASEAN under the leadership of Thailand and will be a partner in its implementation. I would like to explore similar initiatives with other sub-regional institutions. A coherent regional level approach is becoming increasingly important to overcome challenges which transcend borders and strengthen the means of implementation, such as financing for development, data, and statistics. In Asia-Pacific, least developed countries, landlocked developing countries, and small island developing states must remain our priority, while at the same time, we should also scale up our support for middle-income emerging countries to ensure their aspirations are met. Her Royal Highness, distinguished delegates, I'm committed to working with all member states to achieve, transform, and resilient societies in our region. The evidence indicates we can be more effective if we empower citizens to support this transformation process. At this 75th session of the Commission, I'm honored by the presence of Her Royal Highness, Princess Mahachakri Sirinthorn, who has shown great dedication to this cause in Thailand. I look forward to benefiting from her rich experiences. Let me also thank the Royal Thai government for hosting UN ESCAP in Bangkok for the past 70 years, since 1949. And also I would like to sincerely thank all member states for their long-standing, unwavering support. I'm looking forward to joining forces with all of you to accelerate progress towards sustainable development in Asia and the Pacific. Thank you for your attention. I wish you a very successful Commission.
Thank you, Madam Executive Secretary, for this comprehensive overview of the policies and the issues that we're facing in our region. Your Royal Highness, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, it is now my pleasant duty to invite the President of Nauru and current Chair of the Pacific Islands Forum, His Excellency Mr. Baron Raka, to deliver his address to the Commission. Mr. President, the floor is yours.
Her Royal Highness, Princess Mahachakri Sirinthorn, His Excellency the Chair of the 75th UNESCAP session, Her Excellency the Under-Secretary General and Executive Secretary of UNESCAP, Ms. Amida Alisabana, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Swadika. 2 weeks ago, the Pacific Islands Forum leaders, the eminent political grouping which I am proud and deeply honored to be chairing, warmly welcomed the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres to our Blue Pacific region. The Secretary General came with two fundamental goals in mind. First, the increasing severe impacts of climate change, and second, the deepening threats to the world's ocean and sea. We are gathered at this ESCAP session to address the many challenges that we as nations face in our home countries, and through our collective will and action, we hope to improve the lives of our people. The theme of the 75th session is empowering people and ensuring inclusiveness and equality. And this is a very important point to deliberate on, considering that humanity has never faced a greater challenge to its existence than ever before. I come here today and returning to the UN with many of the messages brought by the Secretary General, and in many ways to articulate the existential threats facing the countries of my region, and to empower nations under the banner of inclusiveness and equality. And that is to make climate change and oceans the top priorities in our great Asia-Pacific region. After all, enhanced public investment in areas such as social, health, and education can empower the peoples to have a greater responsiveness to this global problem. Ladies and gentlemen, the ocean covers 70% of our Earth's surface, and it is home to 50 to 80% of all life on Earth. The ocean generates 50% of our oxygen. It also absorbs 25% of our carbon emissions and captures 90% of the additional heat that we are generating from those emissions. Goods and services from the ocean generate about $2.5 trillion each year, an amount expected to double by 2030. That makes it the 7th largest economy in the world today. For the Pacific, the returns are much less. These have increased in recent years thanks largely to the efforts of the parties to the Nauru Agreement, PLENARY, which is the leading tuna fisheries management agency in the Pacific region. Still, of the $2.63 billion harvested in 2016, only $1.1 billion or 41% were taken by domestic or local-based, but not necessarily domestically owned fleets in the Pacific. We have talked and debated about the science of climate change for years, and we fully agree that it is no longer in doubt. Oceans are heating up and becoming more acidic, causing coral bleaching and reducing biodiversity. And fisheries in some places are collapsing from over-exploitation. Pollution is filling the seas with poison and trash, most of it coming from this part of our region. We are told that plastics could outweigh fish in our seas by 2050. We are only 10 million in the Pacific, where the world has over 3 billion people, mostly in Asia, who are dependent in one way or another on the ocean for nutrition and livelihoods. Many countries and municipalities are finally taking action, including through recycling efforts and by rejecting single-use plastic, among many others. But as you discuss the report on the countries with special needs, remember the ocean and do more to address the conflicting demands from industry, fishing, shipping, mining, and tourism that are creating unsustainable levels and of stress on marine and coastal ecosystems. We're doing our bit. We have enacted the Boy Declaration to put climate change at the forefront of our collective security action. We have sought to drive global advocacy on climate change and ocean and set ambitious, nationally determined contributions. And we have taken a world-leading integrated approach to tackling climate change and disaster risks through our framework for resilient development in the Pacific. But the whole world must move if we are to change our current course. Limiting warming to below 1.5 degrees Celsius remains feasible, and it is the only viable path. God willing, we won't return home to find our villages inundated by waves and our homes and public infrastructure wrecked by cyclones. But even if that were to be the case, it's worth the trip here to say that we are all in this together. In welcoming the Secretary General to our region, I said that it was precisely our smallness and our isolation of populations and of economies, coupled with our increasing vulnerabilities to external economic and climate shocks, which makes us more determined than ever to push for a stronger United Nations. We now have multilateral concurrence of climate targets and commitments, but we need a much stronger multilateral system and much stronger regional consensus and agreements to raise ambition and commitment closer to a level where there is a chance for our children's children to survive. Let us together seize the opportunity of the Secretary General's Climate Action Summit to make the changes we need to reverse climate change. Let us look at what this Commission can do to help its members go to the summit with much more ambitious plans and commitments in our NDCs. The Pacific will dearly love to see more focus on the ocean in this multilateral regional platform, perhaps in the theme for next year's Commission. And let me say that sea level rise in, say, Tuvalu is sea level rise in New York and also in Bangkok, even if one goes under before the others. And the collapse of the tuna fisheries in the Pacific is the collapse of tuna industry in Thailand and in Asia. In my own country, Nauru, over 90% of the population and infrastructure are located along the thin coast fringe, and we have undertaken to put in place a managed retreat of our population and infrastructure to higher ground, and we need help to realize this. As a matter of fact, a lot of countries in our Asia-Pacific region need help to address the onslaught of climate change in their own respective ways. And we all look to the United Nations and, of course, the Commission in providing pathways to the immense challenges that lie ahead. We are truly thankful to all our development partners from the Asia-Pacific region, including our gracious host, for the help we are getting to adapt to our new reality. But let us do more, much more, to save our ocean and blue planet. Let us not leave anyone behind, and let us empower our peoples through transformation and enhanced social, health, and educational systems so that they can contribute in addressing the threats to our oceans and to our climate. In the words of the Undersecretary General, Alisa Bana, and I quote, "Transformation in our societies is now the only available option," unquote. Our children's children and their children will thank us for it. I wish the 75th ESCAP session a happy Diamond Jubilee, and may its work prosper in addressing the challenges in our region. God bless the Asia-Pacific region. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're indeed living in an increasingly interdependent world, and we're owing a shared responsibility to our global ecosystem. And now, Your Royal Highness, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, it is my distinct honor to invite Her Royal Highness Princess Mahachakri Sirindon of Thailand to deliver her special address to the Commission. Your Royal Highness, the floor is open.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for inviting me today to put forward some thoughts about sustainable development. 6 years ago, I had the opportunity to join ESCAP in the first Asia-Pacific UN Zero Hunger Challenge launched in Timor-Leste. At that time, Dr. Nolene Hazer was the executive secretary. Since then, I have tried in my capacity to arrange some programs, namely agriculture and health programs in schools in Timor-Leste. Between 10 and 13 of June, I shall be in Timor-Leste again. This time, I shall work also on water supply for agricultural plots that I hope will increase the production to a certain level. In our work, aiming at zero hunger does not mean only to stop people from being hungry, but these people should get the right to nutritious food, which I consider a basic human rights, and thus having good health leads to their well-being. My talk will be on sustainable development. In this context, development means making the area better. People who live in underdeveloped areas should also be happier and live better. It is not to chase people who live in poverty there away to be poorer in other places and bring in richer people to live in developed housing estates that have just been built. Development is an integrated work with many dimensions and issues to be addressed. In order to achieve sustainable development, knowledge in various fields is very important. Here, I would like to talk about 3 dimensions: health, education, and jobs, agriculture or non-agriculture jobs. Another important keyword is sustainable or sustainability. Development work should not last only a few years, but should go on as long as possible. Knowledgeable experts or extension workers who go to the place from outside the community to undertake the development work. It's not enough. Many of them inspire younger generation of experts to go and work for the people in that community. That is not enough. There must be the local wisdoms or local sages who have the knowledge that they have acquired from the forefathers and pass on the knowledge and working skills to the younger generations. These younger generations have the opportunity and access to learn more, since there are more schools than in the old days. Apart from teachers, children now can get the knowledge from books in school libraries, from new media such as the internet. I myself work mainly in the rural areas where agriculture is still very important. Since I'm interested in education and had a doctoral degree in development education, I often visit schools and set up new ones, and more than 40 years after visiting many years, then after visiting many villages and many schools, I saw that many children and even adults looked sickly, and they were really sick. People with bad health cannot work well, and malnourished children cannot excel in their studies. I got an idea that I should find a way to produce food and promote health in schools. In the beginning, I have not even start to improve education quality or standard. Many years ago, I traveled with personnel from the World Food Program to India. I told a colleague from World Food Program about my approach. He said, I'm a medical doctor, but I think the most important start must be education. For instance, if a mother have the access to education, her children will have more opportunity to have good health. Well, from that conversation, I assumed that we are both correct. The issue has to be addressed in a holistic way. Concerning health, many things should be done. Children have to get balanced food. We measure the weight and height of children and compare with the children's age. In the same school, there can be problems of both underweight and overweight children. We cooperate with local health center in studying and giving treatments to pregnant women, nursing mothers, and newborn babies. Preventive measures such as vaccination or immunization is still important. Control recurrent diseases. Treatment of communicable and non-communicable diseases. Clean drinking water is very important. Now water sources, even rainwater, are often contaminated with bacteria from bird droppings or animal feces and toxic chemical residue from herbicides, pesticides, or chemical fertilizers, as well as heavy metal loads in the soil in ore mines. WHO officers who came to Thailand commented that we use too much bottled water than necessary. There are many ways to get clean water: boiling, filtering to clean out the chemical, reverse osmosis process is necessary. The membrane technology is efficient but still expensive. When I was young, I had seen extreme case of malnutrition. People believed they should not eat animal meat and even eggs. The result was that there were cases of marasmus and kwashiorkor. Now all problems are solved and people who are still vegetarians are healthy. Doctors at the university hospital treated the patients. They supported handicrafts such as weaving. The Highland Royal Project support the cultivation of protein-rich plants and rice. On nutritional side, we have school farms with animal, fish, vegetable, and fruit trees. Funding this is giving for what we have to buy. Children learn modern agriculture techniques and how to run organic farm using compost and organic insecticides. They learn also about cooperative. Some people say that 10 years old is too young to learn about cooperative, but they actually can master the technique. They learn also about cooking, food preservation, and easy food processing. We also emphasize on hygiene, such as dental health, clean hair, means no lice, no skin diseases, worm and deworming, toilets, sanitation, and personal hygiene. School can be used as a clinic for students and the public. Teacher or additional employees are trained to use computer for distant medicine to consult medical personnel from hospitals. Another issue is education or transferring of knowledge. It is the education is crucial to all activities in life. I have the opportunity to work with both private schools and government schools run by many agencies. Ministry of Education, local administration, border patrol, police. I use school mapping for education planning from kindergarten to higher education, as well as planning to provide transportation for students who live far away from schools. We should provide also dormitories and meals. Theoretically, a child should have access to all levels of education. In schools and outside schools, literacy programs should be implemented for both children and adults. There used to be an argument in which language should be taught. They should be taught. Apart from international schools, I think the media of teaching should be the national language, in our case, as the Thai language. We should not block anyone from the opportunity of having mainstream education. For young children, teachers who can speak local or tribal languages can help the young children to understand better, but national language to be taught in the hope that all the people should get the opportunity to continue their studies in universities. It is ideal that English and other languages should be taught also. The second foreign language is also important. When I was young, I studied English as a second language, and I studied French. Some friends choose German, but now Eastern languages are as Chinese or Japanese are more popular. Some studies also languages of neighboring countries such as Malay, Burmese, Cambodian, and Vietnamese or others. Knowing many languages is the essential key to knowledge and increases the job opportunity. In many schools, children are not good in math and sciences. There should be a good approach to teach these subjects. If there are not enough qualified teachers, computer, internet, offline digital materials such as MOOCs or distant learning can help. Now we aim at two-way distant learning, so students from faraway places can also ask and answer questions. If we have good libraries, good books are helpful. I hope that the authority would promote more vocational or technical subjects, especially the arrangement of dual system that businesses or industries cooperate with educational institutes. Then we talk about jobs. When students and people have knowledge, it is easier for them to find jobs, and they will get the income to look after themselves. I would like to use agriculture as an example. To promote agriculture, firstly, we need water irrigation techniques, digging farm ponds, pumping with oil or solar cells. We even have mobile solar cells now. Cloud seeding or rainmaking is helpful in drought-stricken areas. Secondly, we need good fertile soil, then good seeds or food saplings. Farmers should know about food preservation, food processing, agro-industry and marketing, food security and food safety, Cooperative system or working together suits our country well. In dry season, they can have additional income such as weaving, silk, cotton, bamboos, or rattans. Other handicrafts such as silversmiths can be sold. Other jobs can that people in even the rural area, they can be soldiers, policemen, teachers, university lecturers, doctors, nurses, judges, or lawyers, businessmen, engineers, artists, or hotel management, etc. I'm going to talk about some challenges. In Thailand, the citizenship is one of the important issues. Our border is very porous, and also in some mountainous border area, the people cannot go and get registration. The access at the border is difficult, and no one knows exactly where the border is. Some people who do not have citizenship is not they not have citizenship, and it is difficult for them to get benefits from government services such as going to hospital, learning in schools, or get the official jobs. Agriculture, and the other thing is agriculture vs. conservation. Natural resources, for example, forests are important. Forests protect water, soil, and biodiversity, especially on high mountains and high slopes. The population grows more land and needed the land for housing, agriculture, and we have more people in the country. As population grows, more land are needed for housing, agriculture, and other activities. I try my best to protect forests and regenerate income in the same time and come up with the idea. Call it in Thai สร้างป่าสร้างรายได้ which means building forest, building income. We grow trees not in rows but randomly, choosing native trees and plants with different heights and levels of canopies. The native trees and plants usually have strong root system. These plant can collect, can hold water and soil very well. These plants can be collected by farmers. They are allowed to collect them. They, for example, collect fruits and some part of the trees without being jailed. They have economic value. The fruits and other parts can be picked and introduced into agro-industry and generate additional income. Our successful plants are coffee, maquan or Santosalum, Limonella, Alston. It's a big trees. And Indian gooseberry, book, elephant foot yam, Tua Mahe or pigeon pea, rattan and cane, etc. Another method that my father taught everyone is 3 kinds of forests with 4 benefits. Fast-growing wood for construction and fuel, edible plants. These 3 have the 4th benefit in conserving the water or humidity. We plant trees along with building check dams on the high slope. International cooperation. Sharing is the key word for life at present. We cannot live and be prosperous alone. We in Thailand get a lot of knowledge from studying and training and other assistance from other countries. We also share our knowledge with others by inviting people from other countries to come for study tours or trainings. And also we have the programs or projects in many countries. In Thailand, I have my own nutrition programs for almost 40 years and work in other 10 Asian countries. We integrate the knowledge of education, health, hygiene, sanitation, nutrition, agriculture, and home industry for the benefit of schools and communities. I am also involved with my father's other projects abroad, such as the integrate farming projects into African countries. This year, Thailand hosts ASEAN meeting, so we hope that we shall have more the opportunity to work more closely with other countries, not only in ASEAN, but all over the world. Sharing and helping each other create and nurture friendship, and friendship is most valuable gift of all. Thank you.
Your Royal Highness, on behalf of the Commission, I really would like to thank you for your address, and we all know very well about your international outreach and your benevolent, very humane activities around the region. I remember in the early 90s, in the very early stage of our very difficult transition to market economy and democracy, you visited Mongolia and you were also extending your hand of help to some of our rural communities and their children, and Mongolia still remembers kindly with warmth your true, genuine, help to our communities. Yeah, and after your visit, I remember many technical, as a result of technical assistance program, many Mongolian young students came over to Thailand and they studied here, and they benefited a lot from this cooperation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. And Mongolia is really a good friend of us.
Thank you. Now, Your Royal Highness, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, we're moving to the group photograph session, and I would like to request the Secretariat to announce the arrangements for this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I now invite all delegates, heads of delegations of members and associate members of ESCAP to join us on stage for the group photo. And your liaison officers will guide you on stage and show you the lineup for the picture. Ladies and gentlemen, I also take this opportunity to remind you that it's strictly prohibited to take pictures of Her Royal Highness while she's in the room. So please do not take any photographs or use your phones while Her Royal Highness is in the room. Thank you very much for your cooperation.
It's a good opening. It's a good opening.
Thank you. I think everybody had really good things to say. We'll wait here and then when everybody's done.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I please ask all heads of delegations of members and associate members of ESCAP to join us on stage, and all other delegates to remain seated, please. Thank you very much for your cooperation.
Sorry, mind your step, please.
Yeah.
Okay, just wait here for now.
Okay.
Because
Cambodia.
only the
What?
only the head of the delegation.
Our head is Prime Minister.
Okay, then no need because he will be in the picture. Sorry.
So how many invited?
Just the
One.
Prime Minister, so you can
Oh, only Prime Minister?
Yeah.
Not the
I mean the head of delegation.
Yeah, he's still on the way.
No, he's representing the
Okay.
government.
One Cambodia. Thank you. Sorry.
Ladies and gentlemen, while we're preparing the lineup for the group photo, may I kindly remind you that it's strictly forbidden to take pictures while Her Royal Highness is in the room. Thank you for your cooperation.
Yeah, okay, yeah, thank you.
One more?
Ladies and gentlemen, may I ask your cooperation, please? Ladies and gentlemen, may I ask your cooperation, please, to not take photographs in the presence of Her Royal Highness. She is returning to the hall now.
Would you like to put your badge in your pocket so that it will look nicer on the picture? Thank you.
Yeah, it's finished. Right? No one else in there.
Okay, she's just chatting, so just let her chat.
Do you hear last meeting? This is the first time. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. May I keep your attention, please, and ask all participants to remain standing for the departure of Her Royal Highness Princess Maha Chakrisirinton. May I now request the liaison officers to please assist all heads of delegation back to their seats. Please do not leave the room, as we will resume the program shortly.
We can go back to our... technician. You should be showing the videos. Where's the technician?
Video.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will resume very shortly, so please do not leave the room. Thank you.
They want to know how long they have. Honey. Half of the room is gone. To bring them back. Here's one. He arrived. He's arriving. Okay. He's arriving.
Check, check, 1, 2.
He's
Audio
arriving
check, 1, 2.
in the UNCC.
Audio check,
He's
1, 2.
motivated.
Sì, no, para avisar de él. Everybody left. Can we do something?
I think you can announce it.
No, but I'm worried about the people that left. She already made a few announcements, but the people that have left here, right? So I don't know. They seem to be everybody outside. I don't know if there's somebody can help us. Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I please request you to take your seats? We will shortly continue with the meeting.
Herding everybody back to the room. Yeah, I think we can do a little chit chat. Ingrid just made an announcement making everybody sit, but a lot of people left already. Iticha is doing the herding. Okay, sit now. Yeah, Mitch says that just bring them in. Yeah.
Test, 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 test. Test, 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 test. Test, 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 test.
Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. We will continue shortly.
Test, test.
Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. We will continue the meeting now. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, may I draw your attention to the entrance of Samdech Hun Sen, Prime Minister of Cambodia, and Ms. Amida Salsia Alis-Jabana, Under-Secretary General of the United Nations and Executive Secretary of ESCAP. I now turn the proceedings over to the chair.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Before we move to the next item on our agenda, it is my honor to invite Samdech Prime Minister Hun Sen of Cambodia to deliver his address to the Commission. It is the first time that Samdech Prime Minister is speaking before the Commission, and it is our honor to hear him share some perspectives about Cambodia's success in ending its civil war and increasing inclusion through the implementation of a win-win policy for Cambodians from all walks of life, including economic policies that have led Cambodia to become one of the fastest growing countries in the world. Samdech Prime Minister, you have the floor.
Adam Betien, Adam Luke and Tew, Ahlo Srei. ថ្ងៃនេះខ្ញុំមានសេចក្តីរីករាយជាណែកដែលបានមកចូលរួមក្នុងសន្និបាតប្រចាំឆ្នាំលើកទី75របស់គណៈកម្មការសេដ្ឋកិច្ច
និងសង្គមកិច្ចសម្រាប់អាស៊ីនិងប៉ាស៊ីហ្វិកនៃអង្គការសហប្រជាជាតិក្រោមប្រធានបទការផ្ដល់សិទ្ធិអំណាចជូនប្រជាជននិងការធានានៅបរិយាបន្ននិងសមភាពក្នុងនាមរាជរដ្ឋាភិបាលកម្ពុជាខ្ញុំសូមថ្លែងអំណរគុណនិងវាយតម្លៃខ្ពស់ចំពោះ UN ESCAP ដែលបានរៀបចំនិងអញ្ជើញខ្ញុំចូលរួមក្នុងព្រឹត្តិការណ៍ដ៏សំខាន់នេះរវាងវេរៈឆ្នាំ2030សម្រាប់ការអភិវឌ្ឍប្រកបដោយចីរភាពពិតជាការអំពាវនាវឲ្យមានសកម្មភាពក្នុងការឆ្លើយតបទៅនឹងគោលដៅគ្មាននរណាម្នាក់ត្រូវបានបំភ្លេចចោលប្រធានបទនៃវេទិកាពិភាក្សានយោបាយកម្រិតខ្ពស់ឆ្នាំ2019ស្តីពីការអភិវឌ្ឍប្រកបដោយចីរភាពនិងប្រធានបទនៃសន្និបាតឆ្នាំនេះស្ដែងចេញនៅសុឆន្ទៈរបស់សហគមន៍ពិភពលោកក្នុងការតម្រង់ទិសសង្គមដែលមានការបែងចែកសម្ដៅជំរុញឲ្យសង្គមទាំងនេះផ្ដល់នៅសិទ្ធិអំណាចបរិយាបន្ននិងផ្ដល់នៅឱកាសស្មើគ្នាដល់មនុស្សគ្រប់រូបខ្ញុំមានការជឿជាក់ខ្ពស់ថា UN ESCAP ក្រោមការដឹកនាំដ៏មោះមុតនិងប្រកបដោយធម្មវន្តរបស់លោកជំទាវអាមីដាសាល់ស៊ីយ៉ាអាលីចាបាណាអគ្គលេខាធិការរងអង្គការសហប្រជាជាតិនិងជាប្រធាន UN ESCAP នឹងទទួលបានជោគជ័យយ៉ាងពិតប្រាកដលើគោលដៅនេះច្បាស់ណាស់ថាជាទូទៅភាពខុសគ្នាឬការបែងចែករវាងក្រុមសង្គមផ្សេងតែងតែកើតមាននៅក្នុងគ្រប់សង្គមជាតិដោយឡែកចំពោះប្រជាជនកម្ពុជាទោះបីទទួលបានការរីកចម្រើនក្នុងរយៈពេលប៉ុន្មានទសវត្សរ៍ចុងក្រោយនេះក្តីក៏នៅមានសតបប្រជាជនឬសហគមន៍មួយចំនួនមិនទាន់ទទួលបាននៅសិទ្ធិអំណាចសមរម្យនៅងាយទទួលរងគ្រោះនិងនៅមិនទាន់ទទួលបានការយកចិត្តទុកដាក់គ្រប់គ្រាន់ផងដែរតើយើងគួរឆ្លើយតបបែបណាទើបប្រជាជនយើងคล้ายជាភ្នាក់ងារក្នុងការផ្លាស់ប្ដូរនិងក្នុងការកំណត់ជោគវាសនារបស់ខ្លួនហើយទទួលបានសិទ្ធិអំណាចសមរម្យតើធ្វើបែបណាទើបអាចជំនះលើឧបសគ្គនានាដើម្បីឆ្លើយតបទៅនឹងការសម្រេចសមភាពសង្គមសមស្របតាមបំណងប្រាថ្នារបស់យើងបានខ្ញុំមានជំនឿជឿថាវិធីសាស្ត្រមួយដែលយើងអាចអនុវត្តបានដើម្បីឈានទៅសម្រេចបាននៅគោលដៅនេះគឺការធ្វើបរិយាបន្នកម្មការធ្វើបរិយាបន្នកម្មអាចសម្រេចទៅបានតាមរយៈការផ្ដល់សិទ្ធិអំណាចដល់ប្រជាជនដោយចាប់ផ្ដើមពីថ្នាក់មូលដ្ឋានដែលជាការអនុវត្តឲ្យពួកគាត់អាចបង្ហាញពីតម្រូវការរបស់ខ្លួនសម្រាប់ការផ្លាស់ប្ដូរទៅរកសង្គមមួយតែកាន់តែមានសមធម៌ជាលទ្ធផលត្រឡប់មកវិញសង្គមមួយដែលកាន់តែមានសមធម៌និងក៏នឹងคล้ายជាមូលដ្ឋានគ្រឹះដ៏រឹងមាំសម្រាប់ការផ្ដល់សិទ្ធិអំណាចកាន់តែពេញលេញនិងបង្កើនបរិយាបន្ននាពេលអនាគតផងដែរក្នុងន័យនេះខ្ញុំសូមវាយតម្លៃខ្ពស់ចំពោះតួនាទីរបស់ UN ESCAP ក្នុងការចូលរួមចំណែកលើកកម្ពស់ការអភិវឌ្ឍសេដ្ឋកិច្ចនិងសង្គមក្នុងតំបន់អាស៊ីប៉ាស៊ីហ្វិកជាពិសេសតាមរយៈការគាំទ្រដល់ការអនុវត្ត SDG ដែលចាត់ទុកបរិយាបន្នជាចំណុចស្នូលនិងជាគោលដៅចម្បងតួនាទីនេះរឹតតែមានសារៈសំខាន់ថែមទៀតសម្រាប់តំបន់យើងក្នុងកាលៈទេសៈបច្ចុប្បន្ន ដែលពិភពលោកនិងសកលភាវូបនីយកម្មកំពុងត្រូវបានគំរាមកំហែងដោយចរន្តកំពានិយមសង្គ្រាមពាណិជ្ជកម្មរវាងមហាអំណាចធំៗនិងវិបត្តិភូមិសាស្ត្រនយោបាយក៏ដូចជាក្នុងពេលអនាគតដែលសកលលោកត្រូវប្រឈមដោះស្រាយនៅបញ្ហាប្រែប្រួលរចនាសម្ព័ន្ធធំៗជាអាចបញ្ហាប្រជាសាស្ត្រនៃមនុស្សចាស់និងមនុស្សក្មេងបញ្ហាហេដ្ឋារចនាសម្ព័ន្ធតភ្ជាប់សន្តិសុខធម្មពលបញ្ហាទឹកនិងបរិស្ថានព្រមទាំងការរីកចម្រើននៃបច្ចេកវិទ្យាដើម្បីកសាងអនាគតតំបន់មួយដ៏រុងរឿងស្របតាមនិន្នាការនៃបដិវត្តន៍ឧស្សាហកម្មទី4ឬសេដ្ឋកិច្ច Digital ឯកឧត្តមលោកជំទាវអស់លោកស្រីនាឱកាសនេះអនុញ្ញាតឲ្យខ្ញុំសូមចែករំលែកអស់លោកអ្នកទាំងអស់គ្នាអំពីជោគជ័យរបស់កម្ពុជាក្នុងការបញ្ចប់សង្គ្រាមស៊ីវិលនិងការធ្វើបរិយាបន្នតាមរយៈគោលនយោបាយឈ្នះឈ្នះសម្រាប់ប្រជាជនកម្ពុជាគ្រប់ស្រទាប់វណ្ណៈនិងគ្រប់និន្នាការនយោបាយព្រះរាជាណាចក្រកម្ពុជាទទួលបានសុខសន្តិភាពនិងការបង្រួបបង្រួមជាតិសម្រាប់ប្រទេសទាំងមូលជាលើកដំបូងក្នុងប្រវត្តិសាស្ត្ររបស់ខ្លួននៅចុងឆ្នាំ1998សង្គ្រាមដែលបានអូសបន្លាយរយៈពេលជាង30ឆ្នាំត្រូវបានបញ្ចប់ទាំងស្រុងនៅពេលដែលកងទ័ពខ្មែរក្រហមបានចុះចូលនិងចូលរួមជាមួយរាជរដ្ឋាភិបាលស្របច្បាប់របស់កម្ពុជានេះគឺជាលទ្ធផលទទួលបានពីគោលនយោបាយឈ្នះឈ្នះដែលយើងបានដាក់ចេញដោយខ្លួនឯងដោយគ្មានការបង្កប់បញ្ជាឬជំនួយពីខាងក្រៅខ្ញុំសូមជម្រាបជូនថាគោលនយោបាយឈ្នះឈ្នះមានរួមបញ្ចូលសមាជិកភាពជាមូលដ្ឋានចំនួន3សំខាន់គឺទី1ការធានាថាបុគ្គលគ្រប់រូបអាចបន្តរស់រានមានជីវិតទី2ការធានាថាបុគ្គលគ្រប់រូបមានការងារនិងមុខរបរចិញ្ចឹមជីវិតទី3ការធានាការពារនៅទ្រព្យសម្បត្តិរបស់បុគ្គលរបស់ពួកគេទាំងអស់គ្នាជាលទ្ធផលនៃគោលនយោបាយឆ្នះឆ្នះនេះសង្គ្រាមនិងចំនួនប្រដាប់អាវុធត្រូវបានបញ្ចប់ទាំងស្រុងហើយកម្ពុជាអាចដោះស្រាយបាននៅបញ្ហាគ្រប់យ៉ាងតាមរយៈការកសាងទំនុកចិត្តរវាងខ្មែរនិងខ្មែរដែលជាប្រការនាំមកនៅសន្តិភាពដ៏រឹងមាំហើយចាក់ឫសកាន់តែជ្រៅក្នុងសង្គមជាតិក្នុងរយៈពេលជាង20ឆ្នាំចុងក្រោយនេះសន្តិភាពគឺជាបុរេលក្ខខណ្ឌដ៏ចម្បងនិងសំខាន់បំផុតសម្រាប់កសាងខឿនសេដ្ឋកិច្ចនិងអភិវឌ្ឍសង្គមជាតិលើមូលដ្ឋាននេះកម្ពុជាសម្រេចបានកំណើនសេដ្ឋកិច្ចជាមធ្យមក្នុងពង្វង់ 7.7% ក្នុងមួយឆ្នាំក្នុងរយៈពេលជាង2ទសវត្សរ៍ចុងក្រោយនេះហើយបានប្រែក្លាយខ្លួនជាប្រទេសមួយក្នុងចំណោមប្រទេសដែលមានកំណើនសេដ្ឋកិច្ចលឿនបំផុតក្នុងពិភពលោកព្រមទាំងបានឆ្លងកាត់ពីឋានៈប្រទេសចំណូលទាបទៅជាប្រទេសចំណូលមធ្យមកម្រិតទាបកាលពីឆ្នាំ2015កន្លងទៅអត្រាភាពក្រីក្រនៅកម្ពុជាបានបន្តធ្លាក់ចុះជាលំដាប់ពីជាង 53% នៅក្នុងឆ្នាំ2004មកនៅត្រឹម 13.5% នៅឆ្នាំ2014ហើយត្រូវបានប៉ាន់ស្មានថានៅស្ថិតនៅក្នុងរង្វង់ 10% នាពេលបច្ចុប្បន្នវិស័យសុខាភិបាលនិងអប់រំក៏សម្រេចបាននូវការរីកចម្រើនគួរឲ្យកត់សម្គាល់ទោះបីមានសេសសល់បញ្ហាប្រឈមមួយចំនួនដែលរាជរដ្ឋាភិបាលត្រូវបន្តដោះស្រាយក៏ដោយជាមួយនឹងសមិទ្ធផលដ៏ធំធេងនេះកម្ពុជាមានមហិច្ឆតាក្នុងការក្តាប់យកមកវិញនៅមោទនភាពជាតិតាមរយៈការប្រែក្លាយខ្លួនទៅជាប្រទេសចំណូលមធ្យមកម្រិតខ្ពស់នៅឆ្នាំ2030ហើយនឹងទៅជាប្រទេសដែលមានចំណូលខ្ពស់នៅឆ្នាំ2050ជាមួយគ្នានេះដែរខ្ញុំក៏សូមយកឱកាសនេះគូសរំលឹក អំពីកិច្ចខិតខំប្រឹងប្រែងនិងការបញ្ញាចិត្តរបស់រាជរដ្ឋាភិបាលកម្ពុជាក្នុងការឈានទៅសម្រេចបាននៅគោលដៅគ្មាននរណាម្នាក់ត្រូវបានបំភ្លេចចោលតាមរយៈការអនុវត្តនៅគោលនយោបាយអភិវឌ្ឍជាគន្លឹះចំនួន3គឺទី1ការដាក់ចេញនៅក្របខ័ណ្ឌគោលនយោបាយជាតិកម្ពុជាសង្គមឆ្នាំ2016-2025ដើម្បីបង្កើនផែនការផែនការយុទ្ធសាស្ត្រក្នុងការធានាឲ្យមានសុវត្ថិភាពប្រាក់ចំណូលនិងកាត់បន្ថយភាពងាយរងគ្រោះផ្នែកសេដ្ឋកិច្ចនិងហិរញ្ញវត្ថុព្រមទាំងបង្កើនសុខុមាលភាពរបស់ប្រជាជននិងពង្រឹងសាមគ្គីភាពក្នុងសង្គមទី2ការផ្តល់សេវាថែទាំសុខភាពដែលមានគុណភាពនិងមានតម្លៃសមរម្យតាមរយៈមូលនិធិសមត្ថៈសុខាភិបាលដែលបានផ្តល់សេវាថែទាំសុខភាពដោយឥតគិតថ្លៃដល់ប្រជាជនក្រីក្រព្រមទាំងផ្តល់នៅជំនួយឧបត្ថម្ភជាសាច់ប្រាក់ដល់ស្ត្រីសម្រាលកូននិងដល់ស្ត្រីមានផ្ទៃពោះនិងកុមារអាយុក្រោម2ឆ្នាំនៃគ្រួសារក្រីក្រទី3ការដាក់ចេញនៅគោលនយោបាយជាតិស្តីពីមនុស្សចាស់2017-2030ដែលសម្ដៅគាំទ្រនិងដោះស្រាយបញ្ហារបស់មនុស្សចាស់មនុស្សវ័យចាស់ដោយយកចិត្តទុកដាក់លើការប្រែប្រួលនៃកត្តាប្រជាសាស្ត្រជាមួយនឹងចក្ខុវិស័យនានាចក្ខុវិស័យនៃការធានាថាមនុស្សវ័យចាស់អាចចូលរួមដោយសេរីនិងដោយសេចក្តីថ្លៃថ្នូរនៅក្នុងគ្រួសារសហគមន៍សកម្មភាពសេដ្ឋកិច្ចសកម្មភាពសាសនានិងសកម្មភាពនយោបាយតាមបំណងប្រាថ្នារបស់ពួកគាត់ហើយប្រជាជនវ័យក្មេងក៏ត្រូវតែទទួលបានចំណេះដឹងនិងជំនាញដែលអាចអនុញ្ញាតឲ្យពួកគេរស់នៅប្រកបដោយផលិតភាពសុខភាពល្អមានភាពសកម្មនិងមានសេចក្តីថ្លៃថ្នូរនៅពេលដែលពួកគេឈានដល់វ័យចំណាស់ឯកឧត្តមលោកជំទាវអស់លោកស្រីបទពិសោធន៍របស់កម្ពុជាបានបញ្ជាក់យ៉ាងច្បាស់ថាសន្តិភាពនិងស្ថិរភាពគឺជាមូលដ្ឋានគ្រឹះមិនអាចខ្វះបានសម្រាប់ការអភិវឌ្ឍហើយបញ្ជាក់មកវិញការអភិវឌ្ឍប្រកបដោយបរិយាបន្ននិងសវធម៌គឺជាលក្ខខណ្ឌដ៏ចាំបាច់សម្រាប់ពង្រឹងនិងធានានៅសុខសន្តិភាពនិងស្ថិរភាពសង្គមលើមូលដ្ឋាននៃបទពិសោធន៍នេះប្រជាជាតិកម្ពុជាទាំងមូលផ្ដល់តម្លៃខ្ពស់បំផុតចំពោះការខិតខំបន្តថែរក្សាសន្តិភាពនិងស្ថិរភាពព្រមទាំងការជំរុញកិច្ចអភិវឌ្ឍប្រកបដោយបរិយាបន្នដែលបច្ចុប្បន្ននេះកំពុងតែហុចផ្លែផ្កាយ៉ាងពិតប្រាកដជាប្រយោជន៍ជូនដល់ពលរដ្ឋកម្ពុជានៅគ្រប់ឆាកល្ហកក្នុងផ្ទៃប្រទេសមុននឹងបញ្ចប់ខ្ញុំសូមសម្ដែងជាថ្មីម្ដងទៀតនៅការវិនិច្ឆ័យពោះជូនចំពោះអង្គការសហប្រជាជាតិនិងដៃគូអភិវឌ្ឍន៍នានាដែលបានបន្តកិច្ចសហការនិងគាំទ្រដល់ប្រទេសនិងប្រជាជនកម្ពុជាក្នុងពេលកន្លងមកហើយរំពឹងយ៉ាងមុតមមចំពោះសុឆន្ទៈនៃការពង្រឹងនិងលើកកម្ពស់កិច្ចសហប្រតិបត្តិការអភិវឌ្ឍន៍នេះឲ្យកាន់តែសកម្មខ្លាំងឡើងថែមទៀតដើម្បីគោលដៅរួមរបស់យើងទាំងអស់គ្នាគឺកសាងពិភពលោកមួយដែលគ្មាននរណាម្នាក់ត្រូវបានបំភ្លេចចោលជាចុងបញ្ចប់ខ្ញុំសូមជូនពរឲ្យសន្និបាតប្រចាំឆ្នាំលើកទី75នេះទទួលបានផ្លែផ្កាគូជាទីមោទនៈនិងសូមឲ្យអ្នកចូលរួមនិងភ្ញៀវគ្រប់រូបនៅក្នុងអង្គសន្និបាតបានប្រកបតែនឹងសន្តិភាពសុខដុមរមនាសុខភាពវិបុលភាពនិងសុភមង្គលកុំបីឃ្លានគេឡើយសូមអរគុណ
Ying Somo Kunchan, Samdet Nyuk Ratmantri Pratek Kampuchi, Samdet Hun Sen.
Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to thank Prime Minister Hun Sen of Cambodia for his statement. And really, Cambodia is one of the vivid examples of that shows the value of peace. I mean, to establish the peace, and on the basis of this, within a couple of decades, to move from low-income countries to a lower-income, middle-income country is quite an achievement. And indeed, they are displaying the power of peace and compromise. And we really would like to congratulate Cambodia on this fast and robust growth. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we shall take up agenda item 2, empowering people and ensuring inclusiveness and equality, general debate on the theme topic. The Commission's consideration of this agenda item will include a high-level panel discussion moderated by Ms. Suzanne Nam, followed by the Commission's general debate on the topic, where delegations are invited to make their country statements. The main document pertaining to this agenda item is ESCAP/75/1, Closing the Gap, Empowerment and Inclusion in Asia and the Pacific. As you are aware, 2019 is the first time since the adoption of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development that the High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development will be meeting under the auspices of the Economic and Social Council, as well as under the auspices of the General Assembly, the SDG Summit. Given this important intersection, the High-Level Political Forum selected the topic of empowerment as the common thread for reviewing progress on several sustainable development goals, particularly Goal 10 on inequality. I hope that our discussion today and tomorrow will provide strong contributions to the wider debate on reducing inequality for sustainable development, building on our discussions last year and contributing to the two important events that will be held in New York later this year. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, before we begin our discussion on the theme topic, may I invite your attention to the video on the screen for a brief presentation on empowering people and ensuring inclusiveness and equality. The video, please.
The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is a call to leave no one behind, placing equality at the center. To achieve equality, disadvantaged groups need to be empowered to access available opportunities. When development is inclusive, everyone benefits. But achieving equality is the final goal. Gaps in access to opportunities need to narrow. The ESCAP 2019 theme study explores how completion of secondary education, access to full-time work, and household income have changed for disadvantaged groups compared to the more advantaged groups. Progress in closing the gaps has been greatest in secondary education. Countries have been slower in promoting access to decent work for disadvantaged groups. As a result, income gaps remain large and keep growing. Across the region, gaps between rural and urban residents have narrowed the most. In most countries, women have been included in secondary education and full-time employment. Persons with disabilities have been mostly left behind. Progress has clearly been uneven in Asia and the Pacific. What do the furthest behind have in common? Most of them are poor, many are women, they live in rural areas, sometimes they belong to a minority. So, what can be done? Does a country need to be rich to achieve equality? No. Countries which close the gaps are not necessarily the richest. What they have in common is a set of inclusive policies that empower the furthest behind. When inclusive policies and effective institutions are in place, the inequality gap will be closing for all.
It's now my pleasure to invite the Executive Secretary to introduce the theme study.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, after this informative video that we just saw together, it is my pleasure to give further remarks on the theme topic. As all of you understand, this year's topic, which coincides with also the high-level political forum theme, which is on empowering people, ensuring inclusiveness and equality. Certainly, I'm not going to repeat what have been already presented in the short video clip, but in undertaking the theme study, certainly we understand that this topic transcends all sustainable development goals. Therefore, measuring and assessing levels of inclusiveness and empowerment is not easy. Empowerment is an abstract concept. More than a development objective, it is a process and a principle. Its interpretations also vary according to the context. Therefore, to overcome these limitations, we have returned to the core principle of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development of leaving no one behind. With the goal of equality in our sights, this theme study measures whether the gaps between advantaged and disadvantaged groups are closing and whether our societies are becoming more equal. The study posits that more equal outcomes indicate underlying empowerment of disadvantaged population. Whereas the results of the study, the findings, I believe have been presented in the video clip, so I'm not going to repeat. But again, the key questions is whether reversing these trends is possible. Of course, the answer is reversing these trends is not impossible. It's possible, and already outlined in the study that certain countries have followed their own different paths, as has been also shown. Countries, for example, China focus more on investment in rural areas. Other examples, countries such as Bangladesh and India have encouraged participation of civil society. Most of these successful countries have ratified the Human Rights Conventions and many of the ILO fundamental conventions. They have also put in place and enforced anti-discriminatory policies, good governance, and so on and so forth. So therefore, in closing, more than an assessment of progress, this report is also a call to action. The signs of underlying empowerment in our region are insufficient. While our region is transforming fast, we should not ignore this evidence. Where strong institutions and legal frameworks exist, greater equality can be engineered. So therefore, I hope the panel discussion that will follow will shed some light on how governments, private sector, civil society, development partners, academia, all stakeholders can join forces, work together to accelerate progress. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Executive Secretary. Indeed, the process is reversible, and the important thing is that we in ESCAP are also paying our attention to make sure that we mobilize the cooperative mood of the community in our region, really to overcome the challenges that were identified in the report, and to implement the policies that were being recommended. May I now invite the moderator of the high-level panel, Ms. Suzanne Nam, and the esteemed panel members to take their seats.
Distinguished delegates and panelists, welcome to the high-level panel on this year's theme topic, Empowering People and Ensuring Inclusiveness and Equality. I'd like to introduce the panelists this morning. Dr. Bambang Susantono. Dr. Susantono is the Vice President for Knowledge Management and Sustainable Development at the Asian Development Bank, a role he has held since 2015. Senator Montian Buntan. Senator Buntan is a member of the Senate of the Royal Thai Parliament, a member of the UN Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and president of the Civil Society Empowerment Association in Thailand. Her Excellency Ms. Mary Vuniwanga. Her Excellency Ms. Vuniwanga is Minister of Women, Children, and Poverty Alleviation of the Government of Fiji. Her Excellency Ms. Ing Kantapavi. Her Excellency Ms. Ing has served as Minister of Women's Affairs of Cambodia since 2004. Her last reappointment was in 2018. Professor Eun Mi Kim. Professor Kim is a professor and the dean at the graduate school Ewha Women's University in Seoul, Republic of Korea. Mr. Pong Yu Kiat. Mr. Pong is the Vice Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of Chong Sing Holdings Fintech Group Limited, a leading publicly listed fintech group in Asia. Distinguished panelists, you will have 5 minutes to answer the questions posed to you. We will give you a warning when you have 1 minute remaining. It will come from right there with the card. Let's start the discussion by talking about what policy options are available to bolster empowerment of disadvantaged groups. This is a question for the 2 ministers on the panel. Your Excellency, Ms. Ing, could you please answer first? This is a 3-part question. As the bearers of the ultimate responsibility for the well-being of their people, how can governments ensure that quality services are accessible to all, How can governments better hold private sector and development partners accountable? And what can governments do to track who is left behind?
Thank you. It's a huge coverage. If I may say, I think that I think every government would like to implement the no one left behind. I think that depending on the socio-economic and also the political stability and peace we have in our country. I think that my Prime Minister just said the prerequisite is peace, political stability, then we can start the development. The first one is how we determine who is left behind. I think we started first because you know a little bit the history of Cambodia. We started from scratch after the Khmer Rouge regime. So our priority was poverty reduction. Poverty reduction, it was really general in urban and rural areas. Then in 2006, when Cambodia started developing, we have more possibility, especially in terms of financial possibility, to look at the real poor, and we need to identify who are poor. Then we started in 2006 to look at the program, to develop the program we call the ID Poor, the Identity for Poor People. In fact, we identified 17 groups, especially women-headed household, people living with disability, old people, etc. You know the different group, vulnerable groups. Then we started, in fact, this program has the aim to reduce, because the resources are limited, so we need to reduce the overlapping of expanding the same resources for the same thing, because different institutions started their own program, so we need to harmonize and reduce the duplication, and also to make it more efficient, more effective and more efficient. So it's the reason why I started this program we call the ID Poor. So now we cover the poor living in rural areas and urban areas. We know what are the missing, what are the needs. So based on that, the Prime Minister said to you, now we have the possibility to extend this, because it was first the social assistance, it's not the social protection. Then, in order to make our economic development more inclusive and more equitable, so we started in 2016 this huge scheme of social protection for all, including social assistance and social protection. So now people have access to health care, they have access to education, they have access to basic needs that citizens living in a society has to be covered by the government. So in terms of this coverage is really gender mainstream, because the priority when we started this social protection, we look at the priority on women first, women pregnant, how we can take care, because we have a priority in our mind is to reduce the maternal mortality rate, which is still, it is declining, but however, it is still high. So we look at first pregnant women taking care of babies until the infant 2 years old. So we are taking care of with inside this framework, and we are also taking care of the old, the aging people, because now we start having the challenge to have an enabling policy for aging people. In the past, we were thinking more on young people. You know that in Cambodia, we have more young people. We have almost 60% of the total population aged less than 30 years. So it's the reason why we were focusing on young. But now we are coming back on aging people, especially the Prime Minister said already this morning in his speech, I don't start saying again. And this is in the objective of leaving no one behind. And For my ministry, I would like just to say a little bit on my women. I think that it is in this objective of inclusion and equity, Cambodia has established the Ministry of Women's Affairs, taking care of the specific needs of women, and especially during the past 20 years, we took care of women, victims, vulnerable. Now we shift the paradigm from vulnerability, women vulnerable, to empowered women. So in our objective to empower women, we took the economic empowerment as our first priority now to empower our women. When they have this economic bargaining power, they can raise their status by themselves in the society. I think that I would like to leave my colleague probably giving you...
Minister Vanewakwa, if you could answer the same questions.
Thank you. I totally agree with the sentiments shown as a necessary first step to establish, first of all, what disadvantaged groups we're trying to address in policy making. And I think what should follow is a strong legal mandate to ensure that whether governments change during elections or there is always a platform on which every government must fall upon. And in Fiji, we've taken this to consolidate this within our constitution, the supreme law of the country. 2013 constitution that promises for the first time socio-economic rights, the right to water, to food, to decent work, the rights of persons living with disabilities, of children, right to housing, socio-economic rights that's embedded in our constitution, which then mandates Parliament and the judiciary to ensure that all national laws align to what we're promising in the constitution. With such a strong platform, what follows are strong budgets during consultations. We are currently going through budget consultations back home. And because we've promised such things in our constitution and in our national laws, budgets need to then reflect that need within government agencies. If I'm to use one example, in 2017, Fiji ratified the Convention on the Rights of Persons Living with Disabilities. And following that, in 2018, the Fijian Parliament passed a Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, which further clarified our international obligations under the CRPD. And following that, it showed a drastic increase in the budget of my ministry in relation to taking care of persons living with disabilities. There are other examples as well. So following the legal mandate, then government agencies need to follow what the law is saying in relation to this. And when it comes to delivery of government services, Fiji is a group of 300 islands, and 150 of these inhabited. And therein lies unique challenges that most of us in the Pacific face. How do we deliver government services to these isolated communities? Because if we are to reach true equality, empowerment and inclusivity, delivery of quality services need to reach those who have been left behind. So in Fiji, we partnered with UNDP in 2015 through the generous funding of the government of Japan to start a project called the REACH project, focusing specifically on gender equality and inclusive societies. So what this project does is that it's basically a mobile service delivery of government, where we take out critical government services to these otherwise unreachable places. And we found since 2015 up until December 2018, the target of that project was to serve 4,000 people in Fiji. At the end of the project, not the end of the project, in December 2018, we found that over 30,000 Fijians were able to access services. And we're talking about basic government services, like registering a child, registering a death, having a civil marriage, getting access to financial services, opening a bank account, basic services that's needed if we're to reach true equality. So, and the other interesting fact that came out of this particular project is that when we looked at the sex disaggregated data, over 20,000 of the people served were women. And therein it tells us that women
face more challenges in accessing services in these critical areas. So yes, it's critical to find out who is being left behind, and there is a reason why gender equality and empowerment of women and girls is a standalone goal of SDG, and that is something that we try and inculcate in every government policy that the Fijian government carries out. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. This next question is for Senator Montian, and this is also a two-part question. What kind of public interventions are needed to change societal norms and empower disadvantaged groups? What is the responsibility of the right holder to initiate social action, civil society in particular? And what is ultimately the responsibility of governments as duty bearers?
Thank you very much for having me here, and many thanks to ESCAP for taking a lot of initiative to promote such inclusive policy framework in the region. Since I'm from the disability sector, I would like to particularly mention the Incheon strategy, and followed by the Beijing Declaration. Among all inclusiveness, inclusive policies that I would like to address here, now that we have so limited time, is the policy promoting accessibility for all. Now, it may sound very disability-centric to many people, but let me assure you that accessibility can serve as a bridge to achieve inclusion, because inclusion as a jargon alone cannot be achieved without ensuring accessibility. When we talk about accessibility, we mean accessibility of transportation, accessibility of public buildings, accessibility of goods and services, accessibility of the digital infrastructure, digital economy, technology. What we mean by accessibility is that it has to be measurable when it comes to usability, flexibility. It allows for participation, effective, full and effective participation by all members of the society. We know that Asia Pacific is growing. It's an emerging region of the world. It contributes to 60% of economic growth, as mentioned by several speakers, which means that more investment will be put upon new infrastructure, new school buildings, new hospitals, new digital facilities, software and hardware. And without accessibility in mind, we can fail. We are at risk of failure to achieve inclusion. We need to have internationally recognized accessibility standards to ensure that each member of ESCAP regions follow. We need to ensure that the national public procurement policies and all legislation embrace the requirement for accessibility for all. And we need to ensure that companies, business sectors are included in this attempt, in this effort to achieve accessibility for all policies. We're moving towards aging society. We're going to have more people with disabilities, with intersectionalities. There are women, girls, indigenous groups, those without documentation, those who are stateless, undocumented people, people with all kinds of multiple problems. So accessibility can be put up on the table to ensure that Asia Pacific, all people in this region will enjoy equal inclusive development. As for how the people sector, what we need to do is that we need to get together, form civil society groups. As I mentioned earlier in my record, I'm currently president of Civil Society Empowerment Association in Thailand. We promote collective action, formation, strengthening, empowerment of individuals and groups of persons with different mandates, different problems, and different visions. Persons need to be aware of their rights and responsibilities. Civil society need to take initiative in proposing policies and legislations aiming to protect and promote the rights. One example is to promote the Anti-Discrimination Act across all countries in this region to ensure that no one is left behind. We need to have social justice through effective judicial system. And finally, government. Government should have policy to empower individuals and groups of persons, ensure that civil society organizations are legally recognized, promoted financially, technically, and allow for political and public participation, both formally and informally. Such effort will help ensure that all people, advantaged or disadvantaged, could become recognized as rights holders, development partners, and contributors to economic and productivities in all society within our region. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Senator. This next question is for Professor Kim, and it goes to how we design policies. How can policymakers design policies and services that are more inclusive? And is the research community doing a good job at gathering data and evidence and analyzing policy options in light of it?
Thank you, Suzanne, and thank you for this opportunity to be here. I'm speaking as a representative from South Korea, but I also am a member of the 15 independent group of scientists who are mandated by the UN member states to do a critical report of the SDGs. So we're producing the first Global Sustainable Development Report 2019 this September at the UN General Assembly in HLPF. The mission that was given to us was, since that SDGs were decided more in a political process, they wanted the scientists to come back and do a meta-analysis of scientific evidence to bear upon the SDGs and their implementation thus far, and to come up with call for action so that we can achieve the SDGs by 2030 and have a much better world by 2050 for all of us and for our children, grandchildren, and on and on. First of all, I would like to say that policymakers need to take the difficult step of providing greater funds for social protection. The world average is about 11.2%, but that's probably woefully small if we consider that we have to do protection as well as empowerment of these disadvantaged groups. Second, it's very critical that it's not just the public sphere, but also the private sector must be on board. We have to have legal frameworks, but action that go beyond the government protection, but also work with the private sector and civil society and academia, again, to do a more cooperative action, not just legal policies. Finally, let me turn to the issue of research and development and what the scientific community has been able to do. We find that scientific evidence or research and development is woefully concentrated in the advanced developed countries. When we look at the R&D expenditure around the world, it is really concentrated in the more developed countries. Thus, developing countries that where we need the data and evidence are not coming from that region. Inequality in research and development, I think, is a critical gap that needs to be filled as soon as possible. Let me be more specific, more explicit about what kind of R&D. First of all, large pockets of areas need more R&D spending. But secondly, the R&D spending that we currently see comes largely from the private sector for private interest purposes. It is critical that public spending has to be increased dramatically to address the global public needs and concerns that we have, especially for the socially disadvantaged. Disadvantaged groups research must be conducted at local level, community level, and has to probably come from public sources rather than expecting the private sources to provide the funds for that. Finally, it's really important that when we were looking at the data that was currently available, it was at a very aggregated level. So if you want to know whom to target, which groups to target, we really have to have disaggregated data from the community level and up. It's really important that we don't just look at the aggregate data. A country may seem okay, but if there's great inequality, you're missing a whole lot of people who are falling behind in the top average when you just look at the average numbers. And we also have to recognize that there are multiple disabilities and multiple disadvantages that people are suffering from. As the UN ESCAP shows some data in the presentation earlier, it was clear that women with disabilities living in rural areas are probably facing triple inequalities. And they're not just adding inequalities, but they're multiplication of inequalities where if we have better data and better scientific evidence, scientific research to study what the implications of these multiple inequalities mean in their daily lives. So in closing, I would like to say that we have to recognize and reduce the gap in inequality in research and development, scientific evidence. Maybe the developed countries should do more, but we also have to build capacity in developing countries. We often talk about making sure that primary education, now secondary education, should be available in developing countries, but I also argue that we have to have tertiary higher education embedded in the developing countries as well, so they can have sustainability in their research and academic community so that they can find out what is wrong, find out where the changes are needed. So I would like to make those big recommendations. Hopefully somebody's listening so we can see some real change. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. The next question is for Dr. Susantono. What is the role of development partners in strengthening the inclusion elements of projects and policies?
Thank you, Susan. It's a real honor for me to be joining this panel. Asian Development Bank adopted a new strategy 2030 last year in 2018 to achieve a more prosperous, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable Asia Pacific. And we are working with our member countries and stakeholders. And we believe that we cannot achieve to eradicate poverty in Asia Pacific without doing some inclusiveness features in our operations. So our operation last year is about $35 billion in working together with all the member countries in Asia Pacific. And let me give you straight answers for that. How do we do more inclusiveness in our operations? First, in our project preparations, project implementations, and project operation and maintenance, as well as expansion, we are asking our executing agency and implementing agency to have more and more participatory planning process. We believe that by having the participatory planning, we are including all the stakeholders, including those who are disadvantaged and vulnerable group on the process, and we can hear more and more voices from them and included all the suggestions to the design, also the operations of the project itself. So participatory planning is a must in our projects. Second one, we apply what we call the safeguard policies. We have two kinds of safeguard policies. One is on the environmental and the other one is on the social things. On the environment, for example, the project has to comply with all the environmental impact assessment and also biodiversity analysis, for example. And on the social safeguard, the project proponent has to comply with for example, the independent or the IR, the involuntary resettlement, as well as also the more on the social impact of the project itself. So on that front, the indigenous people, for example, we have to take into account in the project design. And in addition to this, since about a couple of years ago, we also screen all projects in ADB of the possible impact of the gender mainstreaming. I'm glad to share with you that more than 50% of our project now has gender elements on that. And we have a target in 2030 to have 75% of all our project has some element of gender component in its operations. So with this, we do hope that we can address all the concerns of those that may left behind in the process. And the third one, while infrastructure development is our core business, about 75 to 70% of our operations is targeting more on the infrastructure development, from water supply, sanitation, energy, rural development, urban development, others. But right now we are increasing the portion of health, education, and social protections to be more sort of like trying to increase the human capital development in the regions. Let me give you some example of this project. In Bangladesh and Cambodia, we have the strengthening human resources and leadership for education projects, which enable knowledge exchange on approaches for improving teacher quality and also effectiveness. In Mongolia, we have improving healthcare financing for a universal health coverage, which will create a more efficient and equitable healthcare system and achieve universal health coverage under the SDG. And the other one is in the Philippines. We have the Kalahi CIDSS National Community-Driven Development Project, which empower the disadvantaged people to formulate their own plans for infrastructure investment in their community, fund basic access infrastructure and other interventions, and also promotes women participation and empowerment in the project. So these are some features that we have in our operations that we believe can address the concern of inequality.
Thank you, Doctor. This next question is for Mr. Pong. Mr. Pong, what can the private sector do to promote decent employment of disadvantaged groups such as informal or low-skilled workers, particularly in the era of the digital economy?
Thank you, Suzanne. First of all, I'm personally very encouraged and glad that at the opening, our guest of honor, Your Royal Highness, the Thai Princess, our Executive Secretary for UN ESCAP, Ms. Armida, and also my panelists, Minister from Fiji, have all recognized the importance of technology. Creating through technology is able to create sustainable effort to bring about empowerment, inclusiveness, and equality. Now, I'd like to highlight one key component that is very critical, and that is segmentation, or else it's very wide to talk through what we are trying to address. So segmentation is very important. And I would like to take this opportunity to share in the next 3 minutes 3 examples in recent years that happened across the region that are very, very successful. The first example is the use of mobile wallets. Now, to many people, the use of mobile wallets, and in China in particular, they are enabling micro wealth management. When I talk about micro wealth management to the general public, I'm talking about, imagine one can do wealth management with just $100 or equivalent. Those things are was never possible in the past. Through online registration, through an apps, all on a digital wallet, are all allowing all these things to happen. And this online $100 micro wealth management we are talking about is relatively or literally risk-free, in the sense that the deposit collected through the gathering of these mobile wallets, they are all deposited into money market funds. Money market funds are defined as money deposited in banks. They are not to be loaned out, taking risks, not talking about investment. Now, this example took place, it started in China in 2013, in April. Within the first year, 81 million people signed up for it. 81 million people. That is equivalent to 270,000 people sign up every single day, from day 1 to day 365. And on average, people have just only deposited $1,100 US. And that, in a year, make it one of the top 5 money market fund in the world. $90 billion can be gathered within a year. And people can withdraw the money anytime, can deposit the money anytime, and they are enjoying more than fixed deposit, 1-year fixed deposit rates. Now this is real empowerment for the socially disadvantaged at this moment. Because you walk into a bank, you say, I have $1,000. The bank, unfortunately, with the current cumbersome processes, are not able to offer the same type of returns or the same type of what they call wealth management offerings to the people. The second thing I want to highlight, and that is what Susanna is talking about, is creating an online marketplace. Now, the equivalent, I do not want to use only narrowed to one particular place, is the Taobao or the Tmall from Alibaba, is helping small, medium-sized company offering their products and services. Not only companies, but they can extend down to farmers, okay? And vegetables and fruits farmers can then reach out to the consumer directly through the online marketplace. Now creating not only the digital connect to help the producer with a higher earnings, but more importantly, they are also helping in a way reduce food wastages. Those are the things that a digital online platform have been able to create. And I think the audience here who are in a position of government who can help to facilitate some of these platforms to be made available. The last example, very quickly, and I think fewer of you may have come across, we are talking about within 10 seconds through big data, okay, nano loans, loan size of $100 to $5,000 can be decided within 10 seconds. And these are not talking about futuristic technologies. These are technologies that are offered not only in China, in Indonesia, and other parts of Asia that I'm aware of. Okay? And through big data analytics, the applicant will actually sign up, download an app, key in the basic information, and within 10 seconds, the decision will be taken whether to lend the 100 or the 500 or the $1,000 to the applicant. And in less than 1 minute, the money is credited in the mobile wallet. Now, all this sounds wonderful, and it comes down to policy. And I think I would recommend for the audience to think about having clear licenses around financial services for fintech companies, number one. Thinking about creating central credit bureaus that may help to facilitate some of this information flow. And the last thing is policies on mobile data network coverage to ensure the socially disadvantaged group would have equal access into the cloud and to the network. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pang. So we're a little bit short on time, but I don't want to finish this panel just yet. So I'm going to ask each of the panelists, I'm going to ask you all the same question, and then we won't have 5 minutes for each of you. We'll really have about 1 minute. So, but I would like to get one more thought from each of you. So I'll ask the question, and we'll just go down the line and do, 30 to 60 seconds if you can. Aside from funding constraints, and of course this is the most complicated one, what challenges do you face in trying to promote empowerment of disadvantaged groups? If you could go first, Doctor.
Thank you. I have a 3 sort of answer on that. First one, perhaps the coordinations. I mean, this is a very conventional challenge for all of us, but it's real. I mean, that from the projects that we are executing on the ground, we always have a challenge in terms of coordinations, vertically, horizontally, diagonally. So you have to have coordination among all stakeholders in order for us to have a maximum impact or optimal impact of the project itself. Second one is the institutional capacity and human resource capacity. So almost always we are confronted by the fact that our executing agency or implementing agency are short of having a capacity that required for sustaining the project and also doing some more participatory and also inclusive things with stakeholders, right? So capacity supplement may be needed, not only capacity building, because capacity building needs sometimes, but actually the need is already there, so sometimes we have to provide some capacity supplement. And the third one is more on the challenge of the disruption of technology. It will be there, and it will, impact especially those who doesn't have or have a low skill. And I think the retraining, reskilling is one of the key that we must do for the more inclusive sort of like development process and also outcome. And to do so, one area that we are in ADB right now is doing is strengthening our TVET program, Technical Vocational Education and Training, so that it can directly bridge the mismatch between the job and skill. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Senator Montian, and I would just ask everybody if you could really keep it to 60 seconds. I apologize, but that's what we have.
Yeah. Thank you. In order to achieve accessibility for all policy as a very good, a very important element of inclusiveness, I'd like to encourage all of us, governments and all sectors, to promote universal design principle when we launch any investment or development of goods and services environment. Universal design principle has to be taken into account, and it has to be embedded in any economic social development scheme, including social protection. And let me assure you that if you take universal design approach, it is very positive and effective in the long run. Give credit to ESCAP, by the way, for launching conducting a paper on public procurement policy to ensure accessibility for all. I'd like to leave that public sector or government sector should not look at its citizens which take collective action as a threat or as an annoying factors. They should be involved and as partner in the designing, implementing, and monitoring process of the policies. And I think this will be the most effective approach, and we can see that inclusion could become reality. And most of all, please give up on giving up. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Your Excellency.
Thank you. The challenges are many, but for the purposes of 60 seconds, I'll pick on the lack of disaggregated data and the need for that to strengthen national institutes for statistics and ensure that data that is collected is disaggregated so that we can have targeted approaches in relation to policies, keeping in mind that it is the most vulnerable people on earth that lack the data in relation to them. So it's very important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will try to be brief also, but I think that to do the work, there is no one ministry, it's the whole government. The problem is coordination between all stakeholders, not just within the government, but also with civil society and academic institutions, etc. So this is the problem of limited effective interministerial and also with partner coordination and cooperation. Huge time you have to spend. Also to convince people from commitment to take action, and of course funding is really necessary for the action. Another thing is, I agree with my colleague, with my two colleagues here, is we need reliable data with sex disaggregated data, and especially also not just sex disaggregated data, but depending on the targets you would like to, which groups you would like to talk about, and then you need those disaggregated data. Another constraint is the insufficient voice and visibility of disadvantaged groups. They need to create the association, the council, in order to raise their visibility and to make their advocacy more visible and more, we can hear, you know? And this is something very important from those groups. Another thing is, of course, the limited capacity for people who are implementing the policies and the programs for disadvantaged groups. The problem is the limited capacity in terms of, for me, for our women, is gender analysis, gender budgeting is very difficult for them to understand, and they still consider like if we are working for women issues, they say it's an additional work. It's not a core work for them. So they have to really change the mindset of people who are working, who are designing the policy and the project.
Thank you. Professor Kim?
Thank you. First of all, top leadership really has to be committed to SDGs. I find that we, as the global community, think SDGs are important for the world, but then we forget it's for our country, our people, and our community, and down to every single citizen. But when doing this meta-analysis, we find different degrees of attention and interest by the top leadership, and I think it's critical that the top leaders are aware of and push this agenda along with all of the people. Second, in Asia, we had a much more harmonious idea of human well-being, humans, and the nature. It's not necessarily the same in the rest of the world. I think the Asian way of thinking about how to live in harmony with nature, how to conserve nature, how to respect nature, I think will have a lot of fruit for lessons for the world in SDGs. Finally, with the data surveillance issue, data surveillance, data sensitivity, data disaggregation, and research and development really must be a priority if we want to tackle the problems. And it has to be done on the ground in the developing countries where the most vulnerable are living with extensive and more than one inequality. So I think data surveillance at the individual community level is critical and can't be done from developed countries dropping in from time to time, but that capability has to be there on the ground in the developing countries, and we all must support and fund that.
Thank you.
Susan, I'll conclude the thoughts with a simple word: regulation. Apart from funding, because I, from the private sector or from my own experience, it is most unfortunate today, many of the business rules, regulations are still archaic, too old. I give an example. They are not exactly in line with the fast changing digital economy. For example, it will come into, when you start to digitize your economy, you will create a lot of disruptions. And when you have disruption, you don't have a proper license. That's the first challenge. When you have disruption, when you have something that moves very fast, you will attract all the bad guys coming into the space. So what is the online policing going to do? And what is the anti-fraud? And then it comes down to people who are in the old economy are properly taxed. What about in the new economy? How are they going to react to that? So it comes down to having an overarch, important framework in terms of how regulations is going to come in. Will also help the private sector to come through and provide their offerings to the socially disadvantaged group in many ways.
Thank you, Mr. Pang. Before we move forward, the distinguished delegate from Indonesia would like to deliver Indonesia's country statement. Yes, please.
Thank you, Susan, and distinguished delegate, esteemed speakers. The theme, empowering people and ensuring inclusiveness and equality, is very timely to us, since inequality could happen in any countries, regardless of their level of development. Indonesia regards three main standpoints as key in empowering the people and ensuring inclusiveness and equality. First, quality education is essential to enhancing the quality of human resources, thus empowering people. In this context, I'm glad to inform you that for the period of 2015 to 2018, Indonesia had successfully increased the net attendance rate at pre-primary education and improve the gross enrollment rate at senior secondary school to 90%. Indonesia is on its way to achieve universal education, particularly since gender parity and income diversity are no longer barriers for students to go to school. Our President has been expanding education grants by distributing smart cards. All children are financially secured to finish their formal education. Second, Indonesia believes that it is vital to improve the welfare of the poor and vulnerable in order to achieve equality. For the first time in history, we have successfully reduced poverty to a single digit. It is also important to maintain stable economic growth and decrease unemployment. The government has launched several vital programs to reach and assist them in their daily lives. We have health cards as the implementation of our universal health care program, which in particular target the most vulnerable ones. We have launched funds for village to help remote areas finance their development, community empowerment, and other social activities. We have also Hopeful Family Program and Maker Program that targets poor, productive women who have developed or want to develop their micro home industry. We also believe that infrastructure development plays an important role in improving inclusivity, connectivity, and reducing inequality. To support this, we have developed innovative financing instruments such as Green Sukuk, Blended Finance, Islamic Charity, Social Impact Investment, and SDGs Financing Hub, which have leveraged resources flows from both public and private sources. Recently, Indonesia launched a low-carbon development plan as part of our transition to green economy, a more sustainable path of development. President Joko Widodo also persistently encourages the development of digital economy. Last year, we have initiated 2020 Go Digital Vision campaign. We believe this effort will not only create employment, but also help small-scale and micro-enterprises expand their marketing networks and spur the growth of banking. Indonesia is one of few countries in the region who has thriving unicorn startups, such as ride-hailing company Gojek, travel site Traveloka, and marketplaces Tokopedia and Bukalapak. These unicorns will, in turn, not only improve Indonesia's economy, but also contribute to regional economy in a wider context. The final point that I would like to make is the importance of partnership between all stakeholders as enabler to achieve SDGs to ensure that the program implementation is inclusive, properly targeted, and has maximum impact. We also believe partnership between countries are essential for the global implementation of SDGs. We have been actively engaging our Pacific friends through South-South and Triangular cooperation, especially in capacity building and technical assistance. In conclusion, Indonesia is committed to achieving the 2030 agenda, an agenda with a people-centered approach. In this regard, for the next 5 years, we will continue to prioritize high-quality education and human capital development to ensure equality and inclusivity, to leave no one behind. This year, we will submit our second voluntary national reviews. This step will help us improve our national effort. At the same time, Indonesia hopes to further strengthen collaboration and cooperation among peoples and countries in striving for the SDGs for the prosperous and resilient Asia and the Pacific region. I thank you.
Thank you. And a very sincere thank you to our panel members and to the audience. It is now my pleasure to return the proceedings to the chair of the commission.
Thank you to our esteemed panelists, and we do apologize that we weren't able to have the discussion for as long as we liked, but nevertheless, we found your perspectives to be quite interesting, and hopefully all of us could find a little bit of wisdom in what was shared. I have just a few announcements before we break for lunch. I don't want to keep folks much longer, but I do have a few key things to mention. First of all, we have the Governing Council elections for 2 of our regional institutions. As you may be aware, we have elections to 3-year terms for the Governing Councils of the Asian and Pacific Center for the Development of Disaster Information Management, APDIM, and the Statistical Institute for Asia and the Pacific, CIAP, which will conclude at the end of this session. So the Commission this year will fill the 8 seats each on the 2 governing councils. The elections will take place on 30 May from 10 to 12:30, which is this Thursday, here in this hall in parallel with the plenary session. The results will be announced later that afternoon, Thursday afternoon, under Agenda Item 10, Other Matters. The list of nominations is available on the Commission website under the page Resources for Delegates. Members and associate members desiring to seek election or re-election to either of the governing councils are requested to complete the nomination forms and submit them to the Office of the Secretary of the Commission by 5 o'clock this afternoon. So far, we've received 14 nominations for CIAP and 8 nominations for APDIM. Also, as part of our continuing efforts to improve the Commission session, we invite all delegations to respond to a quick survey for each session. The survey should take no longer than a couple of minutes, and the Secretariat has circulated for your information access to a QR code and a link to this quick survey. The QR codes are also available on the touch screens that are scattered around the conference center. We'll be breaking shortly for lunch, and then during the lunch hour, we would cordially invite you to attend 3 side events. We have one on strategies for community empowerment and participatory policy planning to reduce risks from tsunamis and water-related disasters. This one is organized by the government of Japan in partnership with the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction and ESCAP. It will begin at 1 p.m. in conference room 2 on this floor. The second event today is an event on advancing gender equality through economic empowerment of women and girls, key catalysts for innovative change. This event is organized by the Government of Canada and ESCAP, and it will also start at 1 p.m. in meeting room H. The third side event today is organized by the Government of China, Kazakhstan, and ESCAP, and it is entitled Advancing Sustainable Development Goals with the Belt and Road Cooperation. The Chinese event will begin at 1:15 with a brief viewing of the exhibition in front of conference room 4, where the meeting will be convened. I just want to have one small reminder here also of the gala reception this evening, hosted by the Executive Secretary. It will begin at 6:30 p.m. downstairs on the ground floor, immediate following the activities this afternoon. And finally, before we close, I would like to join us in a few minutes in front of conference room 1, where the Executive Secretary and other officials will be launching our Asia Pacific Sustainable Development Goal Progress Report for 2019. Thank you very much for your attention.
Well, thank you for today's very active participation to all the delegates. And here I'd like to close the morning session for today, and we'll gather back here after lunch. Thank you. The session is closed.